Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into the provocative, entirely unapologetic mind of Kamala Das to dissect her masterpiece, The Looking Glass. Listen, if you're fascinated by literature that challenges the status quo and forces us to look some really uncomfortable truths right in the eye, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to unpack the deeply layered subtext of one of India's most fearless writers. Let's kick things off with her own words. I am sinner. I am saint. I am the beloved and the betrayed. I have no joys that are not yours, no aches which are not yours. I, too, call myself I. This quote, well, it just perfectly captures her essence. It's that bold, confessional duality that made her such a massive iconoclast. She demanded to be seen in her entirety, flaws, desires, the whole shebang, completely refusing to be boxed into a single convenient identity.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The authentic voice of Kerala. 2. Kamala Das, an iconoclast. 3. Major works and legacy. 4. Reading the Looking Glass. 5. The male gaze and irony. And 6. The complexities of womanhood.
Starting with Section 1, the authentic voice of Kerala. So Kamala Das was born into this formidable literary dynasty in Kerala. I mean, with a newspaper editor for a father and a highly acclaimed poetess for a mother, writing was quite literally in her blood. But Das wasn't interested in just, coasting and upholding tradition. Her life was a constant, intensely personal evolution. That undeniable talent earned her a Nobel Prize shortlist nod in 1984, and then later in life, a headline-making conversion to Islam, where she took the name Kamala Saraya.
Moving right along to Section 2, Kamala Das, an iconoclast.
What really made her an iconoclast was her mastery of confessional poetry. Think about the era for a second. Female sexuality, personal angst, those were largely locked tightly behind closed doors, yet Danes just threw those doors wide open. She totally broke boundaries with his uninhibited, autobiographical frankness, tackling heavy themes of suffering and gender politics without ever once apologizing for her feminine sensibility.
Which brings us to Section 3, Major Works and Legacy.
Looking at her major works, you just see this relentless output of brilliance. It started with her 1965 debut, Summer in Calcutta, which took sharp, direct aim at patriarchal society. Then came The Descendants in 67 and The Old Playhouse in 73. But actually, her most explosive work probably arrived in 1976 with her deeply controversial autobiography, My Story, or Ente Kata. Through all of this, she absolutely cemented her legacy as a completely fearless voice. Now for the main event, Section 4, Reading the Looking Glass. Written in free verse, this poem literally grabs you by the collar right from the jump with some bold, unapologetic advice. Getting a man to love you is easy. Only be honest about your wants as women. Stand nude before the glass with him. She's flat out instructing women to be completely candid about their desires and just embrace total physical vulnerability. It's an incredibly intrepid image, right? It commands your attention from the very first syllable. Section 5, the male gaze and irony. Okay, so that straightforward advice we just read, it's actually a brilliant literary Trojan horse, completely wrapped in biting satire. Das instructs the woman to stand before the mirror, not for her own empowerment, but, and I quote, so that he sees himself the stronger one. Do you see what she's doing? She is intentionally telling the woman to feed the fragile male ego. Das is highlighting the exhausting, performative nature of heterosexual relationships under patriarchy, where a woman's vulnerability is weaponized simply to make the man feel powerful. And this perfectly illustrates her use of irony. Das uses very specific metaphors, like praising the perfection of his limbs, to emphasize his masculinity. But look at the actual power dynamic here. This places the man in a central, powerful position while entirely relegating the woman to a secondary status. She isn't an equal partner at all. She's just the audience, an object meant to reflect his greatness right back at him. Which brings us right back to the title itself, The Looking Glass. Normally, a mirror is a metaphor for self-reflection and truth, right? But Das twists it into this massive double-edged sword. When the woman stands before it with the man, she doesn't actually see herself. She sees herself through his eyes. She becomes a mere object of the male gaze within this lust-driven relationship. It's an absolute masterclass in situational irony.
Finally, Section 6, The Complexities of Womanhood.
The poem then makes this hard pivot to what happens when the man eventually leaves. Das warns that, sure, while getting a man's love might be easy, surviving the aftermath is an entirely different beast. It becomes this devastating living without life. The woman is left wandering, meeting strangers, her ears only hearing his last voice calling out. Das so masterfully exposes the crushing emotional void and deep loneliness that follows when intimacy is built on ego rather than a true, genuine connection. By fully unpacking this single poem, we can see Kamala Das's core themes perfectly synthesized. We see the intricate, often painful dance of vulnerability and power. We feel the sharp sting of loss. We examine female agency right alongside the exhausting reality of navigating the male ego. Ultimately, she paints a holistic, entirely unvarnished portrait of the emotional complexities of womanhood. Which leaves us with one final, truly provocative thought. Written back in 1967, The Looking Glass laid bare the transactional nature of ego and desire. But look around at our modern relationships. Think about our curated social media performances and our ongoing conversations about the male gaze. How much of Kamala Das's satirical warning about power and empty connections remains undeniably true in our world today? Thank you so much for exploring this brilliant piece of literature with me. Until next time, keep looking deeper.